I would like to turn things over to Bill Kohler, who is Chief Executive Officer here at Team NEO in Cleveland for our next panel, which is the Cleveland Innovation District. Bill?
Molly, thank you. And good morning, everyone. Thank you to our panelists for being here today. As Molly said, Bill Kohler from Team NEO. I have been pleased to be a part of the work that this team has done with their institutions for well over a year and a half with the Jobs Ohio team. And I'm seeing great progress. So I'm very excited about the opportunity for them to share the progress they are making and try and pull out through a panel discussion some of the insights that have come from that and some of the opportunities they see going forward. The way we're going to structure the panel is a combination of formal and informal. We're going to ask each of the panelists to share some slides for 5, 7, 10 minutes about some of the progress they're making, some of the challenges they're seeing. And then we'll, for about half the time, and then the other half the time, we'll engage in a conversation. So hopefully you enjoy it. We're happy to take questions. If you have questions and want to put them in the chat, please do so in the second half. We will try and find time to engage the listeners and address any of the questions that come out in the chat. Okay, so with that in mind, let's start and ask Joan Belovich, who is with CSU, to introduce herself and to share some of the good progress that they are making here at CSU.
Hello, good morning, everybody. My name is Joan Belovich. I'm a professor in chemical biomedical engineering at Cleveland State University, and I'm the director of the Innovation District for Cleveland State University. So our role in the CID, we have is focused on education and graduation of students who are going to meet the workforce demands of the state of Ohio. So specifically, we're supposed to generate about 4,500 degrees in the life science area over the next 10 years, about 5,000 degrees in the technology field over the next 10 years. And we're supposed to increase the number of opportunities for internships and co-ops for students in these specific programs. And we know that part of increasing the number of students graduating is making sure the students are well prepared and improving that pipeline for these STEM fields. So as part of that, we are increasing the number of students involved in summer pre-college mathematics preparation programs. And also we have to provide about 3,500 certificates for workforce development and upskilling over this 10-year period. Now, this is a pretty big lift for the university. These numbers mean that we're roughly going to double the annual number of students graduating in the life science field over the next 10 years. And we're going to nearly quadruple the number of students getting degrees in the technology field, as you see by the projections shown here. So what are these specific life science and technology fields that the state of Ohio needs? In the life science, they're considered as biomedical engineering, chemical engineering, chemistry, biology, mathematics, specifically statistics, medical technology, pharmaceutical chemistry, and we're developing new programs in biostatistics and computational biology. In the technology field, that's been defined as information systems, computer engineering, software engineering, and we have a new program in data science. So what's some of the progress that we've achieved over this past year? We have had significant increase in enrollment in these targeted programs, about a 40% increase over the last couple of years. So we are well on our way to meeting the goals of this project. The number of actual degrees awarded has been increased about 14% since our baseline. Everything is compared to 2019, which is pre-pandemic because of all the disruption due to the pandemic. And then in terms of the certificates awarded, we have had a good increase in the number of certificates awarded, especially because of our emphasis on the continuing education type of certificates, which meet immediate needs for employment and for workforce development. Some of the other things that we have been working on as part of this project is that data science program I mentioned. This is a brand new program that we actually started working on 2 to 3 years ago. So it's a Bachelor's of Science in Data Science. And we are accepting our first incoming class for this fall of 2022. We are also working on a new master's degree in statistics and analytics. And as part of that, we're going to have tracks in statistics, biostatistics, and data analytics. And this program is now under review by the Ohio Department of Higher Education. That biostatistics side, again, was identified by Jobs Ohio as there being a very high need for that in the state. And then finally, for the certificate programs, we have developed a new cybersecurity and engineering certificate program. This is 4 credits, so it consists of graduate courses, about 12 credit hours or so, starting this fall, 2022. And if students take this program, they can then apply those courses towards the master's degree in, I believe, computer science. So this could be a bridge for some of the persons working in the area to get them a little jump start on the master's degree. And then we have new programs in the continuing education, construction management, smart manufacturing. We're working on community health and other sort of type of programs for continuing education. So we have a number of milestones we've been working on, things such as developing long-term student recruitment plans, increasing our ties to the corporate community to help us with recruiting students and building this pipeline. Faculty capacity assessment. We've already hired 10 new faculty because of this project, mainly in computer science, information systems, and in mathematics and statistics. And we have another 10 positions that we plan on filling. Growth in these summer programs. And so we had actually 7 new summer programs this year targeting, many of them are targeting the Cleveland Municipal School District, but not all of them. And then having tighter connections with the community colleges and tracking and increasing the number of students doing co-op and internships. So we started tracking that process, and we're definitely working on increasing the number of students who have these opportunities. And then future goals include increasing the enrollment. Of course, we need to do that to get that number of students graduating, increasing the number of students who are doing the co-op internship and participating in these summer programs. And then also working on retention. We can do all this effort to bring in students, but we have to retain them. So a lot of our effort is towards retention of these students. Some of our challenges is to sustain this growth in these fields. You know, that is a large increase for Cleveland State. And we know there's a very high interest in the region for these fields, but encouraging them to come here and then helping them succeed through the program is certainly going to be a challenge. Hiring computer science faculty. We're not the only university that's trying to increase the number of students who graduate computer science students. And that means we're all recruiting computer science faculty. So that's definitely a challenge for us. Increasing the number of students who are participating in co-op, finding the opportunities for them and tracking them, and tracking placement of our students where they go after they graduate is going to be a challenge too. Partnerships, that we can't do this alone. We are, of course, partnering with our 4 partner institutions in the CID. We have lots of partnerships with the Cleveland Municipal School District because we believe these programs give great opportunities for those graduates, and we're constantly working on helping these students prepare and succeed at Cleveland State. We're working on delivering more programs online, and of course, we have a lot of partnerships with employers.
Joan, can I ask you one question?
Sure thing.
In order to take advantage of the opportunities you have embedded in your plan, you mentioned partnerships with not just CMSD, but also employers. What do those look like in order for you to make sure you have the students that are properly trained once they are enrolled and ready to take that next leap? And then in order for you to engage them while you're here, and then hopefully they stay in Northeast Ohio once they graduate. When the partnerships work well, what do they look like to you?
So we have, I would say, 3 main, opportunities for partnerships with employers. One is through our co-op and internship program. And we know that hiring graduates and bringing them online and training them is an expensive process. So an employer can hire a student for 15 weeks, 1 semester, maybe 2 or 3 semesters, It's really a great way to try to see if they're going to be a good fit for your organization at a very low cost. So that's number one. And having more and more of these internships and opportunities helps us market and recruit new students when they see all the opportunities there are just right here in Northeast Ohio or anywhere in Ohio for the region. So that really is a great selling point for the university that helps us build that pipeline. Secondly, we have a process called the senior design, where every student graduating completes a capstone project. And this is a 2-semester project that companies sponsor. They get a team of students, usually 3 to 4 students working on a project. So the company can mentor this team, and they can put as much or as little time into it as they really want. But it gives them exposure to a team of students and at a very low cost. And they can see, over this course of the 2 semesters, are these people going to be good fits for our organization? And it's not uncommon for the sponsors of these projects to then hire the students, or at least a couple of students working on a project. Again, it's an easy way to try them out for 2 semesters before you make that big investment. And then the third is we are often looking for guest lecturers, participants on the different department advisory committees. And that's where the employers really can have some input in the curriculum, saying, we really need students with more background in statistics, for example. This is really what our people, when they're working, this is really some of the specific topics that they need. So it helps the employers give us, the faculty who design the curriculum, some specifics and information on the skills that are needed. So those are really our 3 big areas that we appreciate help from the region, from employers.
Thank you. One of the goals of the Innovation District investment was to find different ways not only to build capabilities, but leverage the connections with the community. And that's a great example of that. Thank you.
Sure.
Next up, Joe Jankowski from Case Western Reserve University. Joe.
All right. Hey, everybody. Joe Jankowski, Chief Innovation Officer with Case Western Reserve University. Pleasure to be here today. It's interesting, whenever we teach innovation to the students at the university, we're always talking about these 2 tenets that are need and multidisciplinarity. And I think you're going to see with the district today, just from hearing from Joan, one of the needs, of course, we have to be a growing, flourishing innovation district is to have the talent to work in these companies. Case's view in a specific part of this innovation district project is to really go upstream of that and try to continue to really accelerate the pace of research that will lead to opportunities to build companies around or to improve the product offerings of companies already in Cleveland. And then I always tell there's a slight nod to timing as well. And we're really excited because the innovation district really got kicked off with Jobs Ohio right around the time we were sort of going through a big change, not just for COVID, but our interim president, Scott Cowan, came in and really said economic development is critical, that we need to become a leader in the region. And then our new president, Kaler, who just started, doubled down on that. And we are really excited. We've had some big investments and we're going to talk about some of those today. So our specific role in the innovation district is next generation healthcare. And what it really did was afforded us, in partnership with Jobs Ohio, to make a committed investment into our research activity. And we kind of did that, as you would imagine, in a portfolio effect. Some of what we did was took a few high growth areas, such as, big data and AI, connectivity, particularly, data connectivity, IoT, and sensing, and said, how are these sort of platforms and our leadership in these research strata going to apply to healthcare? We likewise said, okay, we also have to just get better at what we do at administrating research, right? How can we build the infrastructure so that we make it easier for our superstar researchers to jump in and be productive? How do we improve services so that they're not only happy staying here, as Joan touched on, recruitment is not easy these days, but also recruiting students. How do we make them want to be in Northeast Ohio? And then finally, how do we become a better collaborator, right? Because we've been a great research university for 100+ years. The partners you'll hear about today have been phenomenal institutions for centuries plus, but we have to do more together in order to sort of create the economic development push that's happening. What were we going to do with that, or what was our strategy? Maybe again, let's find our research leaders and support them. It's really service based. What can we do to make it easier for them to flourish? 2 is, how do we capitalize and really invest in our intellectual property commercialization and entrepreneurial services programs, so that when we do catch lightning in the bottle, when there is that opportunity, we're effective at actually putting it in the position where you can have economic growth out of it. And then something Joan touched on, which was tracking the metrics of their students who leave. We have an haven't always done that as well as we should. I mean, I'll say we always, the adage, we sort of punch above our weight class. We didn't tell our story enough. We actually have a lot already that has been done, but we've never really made it a intentional thing to say, hey, let's make sure the world knows what's going on in Northeast Ohio. So we're really happy to also say, as we build out this innovation district, we're going to endeavor together to make sure that the world knows what's going on here. So what have we done in our first year, right? Achievements, the easiest way to track achievements, right, is follow the money. We allocated our first roughly $5 million to a few different specific investments. I'll walk you through here real quick. One is going on that whole idea of connectivity is we invested in the Center for Connected Health Innovation. That really was blessed to be launched originally through a very generous contribution by the Cleveland Foundation years ago in what we called the IOTC with Cleveland State, the Internet of Things Collaborative. We said, let's really focus on health side of that. How do we get data from remote patient monitoring? How do we get data from what people wear, Apple Watches? How do we make sure that a doctor at the UH or the clinic is getting the patient's record with data that might be coming from Israel? So that whole idea of how can we automate data aggregation and use it for decision making. A second program that's super exciting, if you want to talk about sort of the Star Trek world, is the Human Fusions Institute, and particularly the Neural Reality System. It will be the focus of a talk tomorrow by Dustin Tyler as part of this SIPO. So I won't give away everything other than to say that, as everybody in this webinar has realized, right, in the last 30 years, we digitized voice, right, and audio. You can now send something. We digitized visualization. You can send a picture. Imagine if you can digitalize touch, tactical sensation. You now can sit there and send to somebody's brain what it feels like. You can disarm a bomb from 1,000 miles away. You can have human touch and feeling from the other side of the planet. And so our Human Fusions Institute believes that this could not only change individual lives, but obviously can become an entire new industry. And then we made portfolio investments, as you would, on some of our late stage, really cool opportunities where we said, what do we have to do to push this over the transom so that we can get this into the market? So there were a few specific genomic and therapy-based technologies that we invested in. Going back though to that infrastructure side, we also said, all right, speed of business and entrepreneurism matters. What do we got to do to improve our capacity building programs? And so we actually, that's people. We invested heavily in the research administration side so that we can put more grants out, so that we can more effectively charge on proposals, so that we can actually make it easier for researchers and research teams to work together. For Northeast Ohio and for Ohio, when you think about why research matters, of course, it is the genesis of what can become future products and industries. It also is money in, right? It's pure economic development. If CASE is recipient of $390 million a year from outside sources, almost all that's coming from outside the state, mostly the NIH, the DOD, NSF. That's money coming into Northeast Ohio, is with the number one use of that money being salaries, right? So we're creating jobs for people in Northeast Ohio. And then we are aggressively supporting our entrepreneurial programs. We put $1.5 million into 3 commercialization programs. CA, despite the name, it's a cool program, Council for Advancing Human Health. Coulter, we were one of the landmark 9 schools that are an endowed Coulter Translational Research Program, and then our Spartan Pre-Seed Investment Fund. So if you can see, we're sort of following that spectrum and saying, look, beyond specific technologies, we're also going to create the systems in place so that we can be opportunistic as these things emerge. The goals are audacious, but I think as a taxpayer, I'm excited because they're objectively measured. We are supposed to increase our aggregate sponsored research activity by $175 million over the next 10 years. So if you're looking at that and saying, well, a $17.5 million investment by Jobs Ohio will be a 10-to-1 return at a minimum threshold. And that came coupled to a 3-to-1 roughly commitment by CASE made by its trustees to invest an additional $50 million in research infrastructure. So again, we're looking at $225 million improvement over where we were when we started this program. While it's always hard to measure, again, with research leading to jobs on campus, we're expecting at least 250 new direct hires based on these the acceleration of these programs. So what are you going to see in the future? Some of this we already heard about, right? Enhanced institutional collaboration with each other, with the 5 we'll hear about today, but also with Ohio businesses, right? We need to do that better. I would say in CASE's first 10 years of really jumping into intellectual property commercialization, which I led in the early 2000s, we're doing a lot of global licensing. We're looking at, working, sending things out to the coasts. Now we're saying, look, we got to do this here. 2 is the directed and talented workforce programs. Used to be a company would come to us, they want to know 3 things. What researchers do you have we can work with? Do you happen to have any intellectual property that we might think might be opportunistic for us? And do you have any sort of infrastructure? You might have an electron microscope or some sort of molecular characterization equipment that we could take cheap advantage of. And those are all great. Today they're coming and going, we need help, we need people, we need talent. What can you do to fill these roles? We need system analysts, we need genomic scientists. So we're seeing a lot more direct and talented, not just directed workforce programs, but as Joan touched on, workforce programs where employers are telling us, can you help us with this? You're going to see, hopefully, there's nothing to give away yet today, but the recruitment of logos that you're going to see as Jobs Ohio and Team Neo has done so well over the last several years of bringing in large corporations who say, I want to be in Ohio, I want to be there because of these assets. And then finally, hopefully, as any innovation district really reaches its stride, you'll see a melding of work-life balance, that you're going to see more people living in University Circle. University Circle has been awesome, right, for decades, but it's arts and it's science and it's healthcare. But it would be great to start to see it be more of a community rather than just a place where these great institutions are. So that's my glimpse of the future, and I look forward to the rest of the day.
Can I ask a follow-up question? You talked about research, leveraging the depth and breadth of your institution's great research capabilities. I'm wondering, you also mentioned high growth areas, following the money to an extent, and then encouraging entrepreneurism and among a number of things. I'm wondering to what extent you are strategically looking at the landscape of activities going on with this group, as well as other opportunities within industry, and how are you leveraging that input to help understand your research priorities and over what time frame? So we're knitting together essentially a set of capabilities.
That's my favorite
leverage.
That's my favorite part of interacting with industry, right? When the outcome looks good, people are like, oh, they sponsored this work or they did this collaboration together. And that really is, that's the nice, tie the bow around outcome. But what's really great about having an interaction even before that outcome is met is it's when the corporate world, and really not the corporate world to say, but they're really just the circuit voice of societal needs. When they're saying, this is where our needs are, can you help? And then our researchers suddenly say, well, I'm no longer a basic researcher or somebody who's just pushing this out, but I now have a perspective of where my research may go in order to fill this need. And that's, again, what's exciting, because there were always pockets, people would do it on their own. But at the institutional level, now the conversations we're having, statewide, right, with Intel and with Amgen and the companies we're talking to and saying, what do you need? Where can you help? What do you need in 3 years? What hasn't worked for you? What do we need to add to our curriculum for our students? And that when that feeds back upstream to the campus, and so researchers can better direct their research platform or direct how they train their students. That's what's really neat, and that's what I think we're seeing by volume so much more than we did over the last 20 years.
Great, thank you, Joe. Next up, Julie Jacono, who is with MetroHealth.
Good afternoon, everyone. Julie Jacono. I'm the Chief Strategy and Innovation Officer at the MetroHealth system. Our role has been, you heard from two of our great higher education institutions, our role is really to collaborate to advance how this investment impacts this region in some slightly different ways than you might expect. Like all the partners, MetroHealth has really strived to be an engaged and thoughtful participant within each of the endeavors and the work streams that we're putting forward, bringing our ideas, our assets, and our support to each of the endeavors that are chaired by our partner institutions. And I'll just give you a preview of what the focus that each of the institutions have focused on, and we'll hear from my colleagues as they go forward, and really how can we as a partner institution help each of them meet their goals. Our focus has been on community responsive care and care transformation. And I think this is one of the realities. We have a city of amazing healthcare and healthcare research, but citizens in the region and in Ohio aren't the healthiest. And so that area of unmet need breeds the need for wonderful innovation, and I think that's what we're hoping and have been working really hard to try to connect. How do we engage across this wonderful collaborative and our region to find ways to take innovations and direct them to the health of this community, and by solving the health of this community, we can create economic development and innovation. So what do we mean by that? Our Community Responsive Care Institute is the focus engine that we have in the Innovation District. And it's really a multifaceted effort to both monitor what's happening in the community so that these amazing researchers know what problems need to get solved, the problems that matter to this region at the grassroots level. And then once an advancement is ready to be translated, have the grassroots models to be able to bring them back in. And I think a prime example that we continuously think about is we, as a country, developed and supported industry to develop wonderful COVID vaccines that were rejected by many of our communities. And so here's an example of amazing clinical transformation and research that didn't quite think through how did the community and the people who needed to be helped by it, how did they need to receive that? And that's part of what we, the role we play. So we're looking to both develop new and effective models for the delivery of healthcare. And I think that that's more real today than it's ever been. Coming out of the pandemic, or as we say, intra-pandemic, because I don't know there's ever going to be an end, how care is delivered has changed fundamentally, and we need to catch up to it because we're behind. How do we quickly move from research to crafting solutions? And again, that is bringing to the research communities exactly the problems that we're seeing, the problems that need to get solved. And then how do we leverage the unique things that MetroHealth has? Our work and our infrastructure in addressing health disparities, social determinants of health, trauma in the community, and that's both physical but also psychological trauma, and what we've done around infant mortality and really underserved care. So we put all of those things into our Community Responsive Care Institute, and what we committed to was to leverage that to improve innovations and bring them into the communities and the neighborhoods of Cleveland. Drive through our population health research and outcomes, drive the research across the innovation district that lets them know the problems that need to get solved, and then come back and say your interventions are or are not having impact. And then partnership with Cleveland State. I think the most wonderful outcome from my perspective, there's many outcomes that could come from the innovation district investment, but that non-PhDs and non-MDs are influenced and brought up by this investment. So when we partner with Cleveland State around the certificates, this is about the ladder from high school or GED into the types of roles in the community that we're going to need to start to see. Community health workers and those types of interventions are incredibly powerful vehicles to bring that workforce into healthcare and into real improvement in our communities. What are some of our achievements? It's really hard to innovate if you don't have street credibility. And I think part of that is really making sure that when we speak to social impact, we speak from a position of credibility. So this year, because of the investments and the work that MetroHealth has done, we were recognized by the Loan Institute as one of the most socially responsible hospital systems in the country. We ranked 15th on the list of 66 US hospitals that earned an A, and we're the highest ranked hospital system in the state of Ohio. So what this really means is this is a measurement of the social impact in a community a health system is making. And that's a manifestation of all the investments and all of the strategy that we have built into our community. Another example, and this is, I think, where policy and academic work comes into that intersection, is policy reports like the California Improvement Network, which is a think tank around how care delivery change needs to happen in primary care. Out of the 10 examples of white papers that were done, MetroHealth is 2 of the 10, demonstrating our care delivery and transformation in primary care really showing real change. Another achievement, and this is in our partnership with the Cleveland Clinic Foundation under their work stream, we really think we can together do something amazing around immunotherapy. And I'm not going to say more, but from MetroHealth standpoint, we looked and said, how can we bring investments in this innovation district to bear to help the community move forward. We're in partnership with both the Case Comprehensive Cancer Center and the National Center of Regenerative Medicine. And under this framework with CCF, under their Global Pathogen and Cell Innovations Group, we took an investment and built a facility that will be open in September. And that facility will bring the capability to the region, the first capability to produce vector, which is a key component of a cell immunotherapy. And we think that this is something that, again, as we all row in the same direction on these big audacious goals, it helps to attract more and more companies and innovations to the area. One of the other types of things under our community responsive care, and these are two things that we're very, very proud of, and we think that came from the collaboration. Our school health program, which operates in many of CMSD's schools, received Ohio's largest award, $4.5 million to expand the program, and that's with many of our partners. Unite Us, and the best way to think about Unite Us, which is now used with both university hospitals and the Cleveland Clinic, is an EMR for social determinants of health, and it links for the first time what people need in the community to medical data. This is going to be a treasure trove of data to be mined around the connection between health equity, social determinants of health, and health outcomes. What do we see for the future? We are looking and hope that some of the large awards that we have now gone after as a collaborative are successful. And I think it's only through the fact that we are all signing up together and all contributing all of our assets together that we're going to get that kind of national notoriety. We want to see our vector facility support this region's ability to lead in CAR-T and immunotherapy. We are part of a much larger strategy. We want to play our part, but we think that this is how we're going to attract companies and researchers. And finally, we think that social determinants of health innovation has to come. And Cleveland is an area where we can have an expertise and we can generate companies and innovations and economic development that really help us and help the region move forward in this area.
So follow up, Julie. You're carving out a leadership position. You're definitely getting recognition nationally for your thought leadership around health equity. The partnerships here, and I presume other healthcare institutions throughout the region and other places that they're emerging, developing. But is the industry seeing this and beginning to think about solutions that can be developed around this?
Yes.
To begin to attract? What are you seeing, and how do we
So in the last 2 years, and I'm sure my colleagues have seen the same, for the first time, we have seen large investments of venture capital and private equity coming into solutions for behavioral health and addiction and Medicaid solutions. When we take a look at just what healthcare contributes to the GDP and what Medicaid and underserved as a percentage of that looks like, these are incredible opportunities to seek improvement and innovation. There are so many companies that have been formed through the pandemic that are really addressing very, very specific interventions around underserved care and trying to really transform what happens in those communities, whether it is primary care or access to care or health equity. I think the intersection of digital transformation that we saw through the pandemic, the social justice outrages that we saw occurring in parallel to the pandemic, has created a platform that cries for change and demands change. And I think all of our health systems and all of our company partners are really recognizing this as not something that's nice to do, but it's a mandate to act.
Thank you. Okay, thank you, Julie. Serpil or Erzurum from the Cleveland Clinic. Thank you, Serpil.
So very excited to be part of the Innovation District with everybody and hearing all the exciting things that have been happening. It's really a great time in Northeast Ohio. We've always been a place for discovery and innovation historically for literally 100 years. And now I think this is just going to increase the inflection upward of what we're all doing And I've been here since 1993. And I've never seen such a coming together. And it's just been fantastic. So with that in mind, our portion of the Innovation District was really founded on this growth of discovery and innovation across our impact areas, which include cancer research, inflammation research, brain and eye diseases, and of course, heart research. And then there was, of course, the explosion of the pandemic, late 2019 through 2020, and continuing, unfortunately. And so when we came together with all of you in the Ohio proposal, we thought that where we could have the greatest support for the Innovation District would be in building this global center for pathogen and human health research. You can see the pillars there. Strong one in virus and immune discovery. And of course, we're working across all the groups here that have been presenting. The idea of personalized medicine. Heard a little bit about it from Joe and from Julie. And then people and populations. The populations in Northeast Ohio are very, very interesting and extremely important to the world. Understanding the problems here can really be solutions across the nation. Diagnostic testing. We have some specialized expertise here. I'm so happy to hear the Coulter Awards. We've been bonded together on that for a long time, very successfully. Tech development, treatments and vaccines. This is what the world needs, but will they accept them, as Julie pointed out? And then finally, the clinical applications and healthcare deliverables. We're all working on this. And this is where innovation and venture capital. And then the training of the workforce. You see that is a foundation across every pillar. And we need our educational partners to support the training of the workforce we need here for the future leaders in Northeast Ohio. Our global center is led by Jay Jung. He's a new recruit, almost 2 years. And he came to us from the University of Southern California. He's an expert in viruses and virus pathogenesis of cancers. He was studying SARS, the first SARS, and now SARS-CoV-2. Since 2021, we've had $17 million in new awards to the Global Center for Pathogen Research, over 1,200 articles. This seems amazing. There's a lot of publications that to me is just stunning. As I do research myself, that idea of 1,200 plus articles is just amazing. We launched a new infection biology program with Jay, and he's recruiting in. Definitely they need data scientists and bioinformaticians and statisticians. Engineers too. Ted Ross was recruited as our Global Director of Vaccine Development. Ted is contractually leading for the NIAID, the vaccine development program, initially for influenza, but of course we're now towards COVID as well. We're accelerating discovery across the region, working closely with all of you. We launched the Cleveland Clinic Biorepository, and I know all of you have mentioned partnerships in Northeast Ohio. We need partners to move in. One of the things we did, and this is the first building on the upper right hand of the slide, to open in the Innovation District back on Cedar, is launching a partnerships with Azenta, a company on the stock market who does biobanking around the world, from the UK with their future health biobanking, throughout China. And they came to Cleveland and built a biobank in partnership with us. We're launching across the Cleveland Clinic this biorepository. You can see the number of samples we have and the number of patients that we've been collecting from. We also launched a second partnership during this period of time that we announced at the beginning of the year of 2022, and that's the Cleveland Clinic IBM Discovery Accelerator. This will allow for the first on-site, privately owned quantum computer. Also allow for cloud hybrid solutions for our high-performance computing needs as we grow all of our data sciences across the region. We're employing everybody that you educate. We've hired 476 people since the Innovation District was announced. These are people in research, innovation, and data science. And we are supporting the graduates and the certificates as much as we possibly can. You know, we want to get into the really pre-graduate education, just as Joan and Joe were talking about. This is imperative. And we are now selecting high school students to start to do internships with us with IBM Research. Here is Musa, one of our young students, our first one, whose dream is to be a computer scientist and work on quantum computing. And he'll be our first intern. We're very pleased. We'd like to expand this 100-fold with all of you. We're investing in our future for populations. They need food. So this was with Myers grocery store. You see the building there will be on the corner of Cedar and East 105th. And it's going up. If you drive past it, you'll see the Fairfax Market will be going up. There will be apartments above. So yes, absolutely. The University Circle and the expanded region with the Innovation District should be a lively place, walking, eating, living. We're renovating existing space for the quantum computer install and the growth of infection biology. And we're finalizing plans for our research expansion. We are planning to grow our research space, nearly doubling it along Cedar Avenue. And those groundbreakings, we hope, will occur early next year. We heard a bit about the big grants that are going in. I'm very excited. Putting in grants together shows that we're working together. And we're able to reach for something bigger in Northeast Ohio. I always like to say teamwork makes the dream work. And it's true. And so we put in for this, and many of you were involved. We may not get it, but this is a good time to say we put in for it. The letter of intent went in, 160 some million, to do innovation engine in Northeast Ohio. I honestly don't think they can find a better place to do it. And so with that, I'll close and I'll say thank you so much, Bill, for having me here.
So can I ask you to speak in a little more detail? So you talked about Azenta and IBM.
Yes.
You have a global brand, great research capabilities. Yes. How are you mobilizing internally to encourage more outreach from the right kind of companies that you want to engage with, who would benefit from the great capabilities you have, so we can create something?
Thank you for asking me that. That is so critical. We all have to work together on that. You have to help us. I mean, we want companies, biotech, to move in. Honestly, to do an innovation district, you do need developers, nice places to live, restaurants to go to, fun stores, music. I mean, look at any of the lively cities that are growing now. It's more than just the work that we're doing. We've got to develop a place where young people think, wow, Cleveland is cool and I'd love to live there. So that's the future I'd like to see. And maybe we can start to plan for what that looks like. Who comes in to develop these neighborhoods around the city? How are they connected? How easy is it to get to Metro from Cleveland Clinic? Or even Case? Where do people park when they come to CSU? I think we have to work on these simple logistics. So we become a single entity and young people come in and see, if I move here, I have an opportunity to go from the clinic to CSU and to Julie over at Metro. Everybody feels part of the whole. I think that's a huge first step that the Cleveland Clinic can do. Need the city to do.
Thank you. And cleanup, Kip Lee from University Hospital. Thank you, Kip.
Right. So many good things have already been said, and I think I will try to close us up here because I'm really eager to hear more about the lively, unstructured part of this in terms of the panel. So we'll breeze through this as fast as we can. I'm Kip Lee. Great to be here. Thank you for having UH and UH Ventures. I'm also representing the work we do closely with our academic research and education partners. And so we have up here a shout out to Jobs Ohio for obvious reasons. Thank you for hosting this in partnership with the EDA and state. I am part of the Ventures team and lead the innovation and product strategy on behalf of the system. and just one of many folks really involved in our product innovation work. And that's really the framing of our contribution in addition to drug discovery and research, and we'll share some of that. But we're really passionate. You mentioned the young people, how to make things cool. I think product innovation is one avenue and vehicle to really attract great talented folks, engineers, clinical innovators, hybrid caregivers, as well as designers and folks in the arts, for sure. We've got some updates that we've been providing to our colleagues as well as Jobs Ohio for the past year. We've, I think, by all means met our and perhaps surpassed some of the goals that we set in place. We're very excited about that. I want to share with you some of the more exciting things, as we're only limited to about 6 slides. One of the things that really caught our attention just, I think, this past week is some research that came out of Cleveland State. And we were so pleased to see this this article, and of course, you know, to see parts of the article call out some of the narrative that we're all involved with. In our case, our team is directly involved with the Cutler Center for Men, looking at a subpopulation of Greater Cleveland where, by our estimates, 250,000 men are just not as engaged as women are in Cleveland. And how might we focus on engaging men? And I'll be the first to raise my hand here to say, you know, it takes a lot for me to go get checked out, even in my own health system. And I've got a wife, I've got other people in the family who have to nudge me to take care of myself. And if it's difficult for someone like me who is part of healthcare, how much all the more is it difficult for the rest of our community? And we have some wonderful work that we're doing as you anticipate. As we anticipate our Abuja Medical Center, which will be getting some renovations next year. A part of that is a boost in terms of our programming. And we will have a men's center that will focus really on bringing customer experience. And oftentimes I think we talk about consumerism, but really bringing it in the way that you just mentioned, where it's exciting and engaging for both young people and everyone else. This last part in the article really caught our attention, talking about the leading edge products and services that we can shape together, addressing health equity, and making that a significant part of our regional export and portfolio. And just to see that come out of CSU this past week, literally digitally hot off the press, very validating and exciting. We have in the fall, one of the concrete things that we are doing on the research front is opening up our Wesley Center for Immunotherapy. And I think immunotherapy was mentioned several times. This is our play. It will be at the Wolstein Center. We've got, of course, not just the building and the architecture and the design, really thinking about the surround sound of this, bringing the right faculty, the right folks and the right programming to do the work right. One of the things that we're really excited about, and this is a shameless plug and shout out to our EDA partners. And some of you may know as part of the work that we're doing regionally. Bill, I know you're definitely aware of this. We're one of 8 projects that are part of the consideration for phase 2 award right now. We should hear back from the EDA sometime in September, we're told. Exciting for us is that this isn't necessarily a digital health or healthcare play per se, as there are some other states, other regions in the United States that have formally submitted under the banner of digital health and healthcare innovation. We were part of the smart manufacturing submission on behalf of Ohio. So thank you for including us. I think it's the one unique healthcare angle in the batch of 8 projects, and we're really excited that we can find a way to be relevant, not just within healthcare, but the very point that many of the folks made already, that this is a regional thing, and how do we really bring all of the, leverage all the assets and strengths we have in the region. Obviously, manufacturing is one, and to find that interesting intersection between service innovation, experiential innovation, which is what we oftentimes do in healthcare, and couple that with manufacturing. Really that fusion of the old and new is exciting for us. And we hope we get something. And we've got some great partners lined up in the region as well, who are just as eager and excited to see how this develops. We're not able to share all of the ways that we're looking to partner with all of the total 5 anchor institutions that are part of the Cleveland Innovation District. But we do have some things that we've highlighted that we're working on, in particular with Case Western Reserve University and Cleveland Clinic, as well as with MetroHealth. We do have some things we're exploring with Cleveland State, of course, as well. I'll end here and I want to jump into the unstructured panel because that's most exciting. But Bill, since you've asked everyone a question so far, is there a question I can quickly answer before I get back to my seat?
I'm going to let you take the next one
All right,
as a group.
sounds good.
I'll let you start. How's that? Hey, thank you all for taking the time to share. I hope our listeners have seen there's been significant progress on a number of fronts individually and in many cases collectively. But Kip, I'm going to let you start off. The one thing that I am asked a lot is this question about collaboration. Can these institutions work together? We've seen some examples of that, and I think you all would say individually and collectively that we're pleased with the progress we're making, learning how to do it and so forth. But collaboration for collaboration's sake just doesn't happen unless you have process, commitment, a philosophy around that. And it's especially hard when you have a series of very visible, significant individual commitments while also trying to make some progress together. How are you balancing those as a group? What kinds of processes are in place? What have you found most effective in that
I'd love to
engagement?
hear from everyone's thoughts on this. Perhaps I can start us off. I think in our conversations to date, I think your point is spot on. We don't want to be doing this for the sake of doing this. How do we think about, as we've talked about with many of the folks here, really grappling through the devil's in the details part of this. And the one thing that I really appreciate the mention that you had, Julie, about you can't have a top-down approach when it comes to engaging with our community. And how do we adopt that kind of ethos in the way we also collaborate with each other? And we've got some great things going on, initiatives, infrastructure investment, capital, the idea of if you build it and they will come, we just can't do that. And I think looking for genuine strategic overlaps and interests, I think starts with being transparent about what we're thinking about, where our interests lie. And I think doing some shopping around, saying, does this fit your interests as well? And we're starting to lock into a few of those themes with our respective institutional partners here. We probably can't share full details yet as we're still grappling through some of the opportunities, but I think looking for authentic strategic alignment, and I'm not sure if we've had that kind of vulnerable conversation forum before. So I know we're having that with many of the institutions here. And how do we bring that appreciation of the pathos where, this is my preference, this is my idea, and you either join me or you don't. We can't have that approach, right? And as we embrace that kind of human-centered approach is what we call it at UH, as we interact and engage with our community, how do we extend that kind of ethos to each other? So I think this is where the soft stuff really shines, and we know it can be done. And so how do we couple some of the hard, exciting stuff that we just shared in terms of headcount, hires, and programs, and couple that with the EQ stuff that I know we're all capable of extending to each other?
Julie.
So I'd add to that, Kip, I completely agree, but I think that only survives is if leadership mandates it to be so. Collaboration is a forced behavior at first before it becomes natural. And I think that was what was so smart, and I'm not just saying that, behind sort of what Jobs Ohio and the governor forced is a recognition from the 5 leaders of these anchor institutions to say you will work together, and a recognition of what that could be. And I think it has proven to be the case. We're not, we could be mired in competing locally if you transcend that one more, then the 3 innovation districts in the state could compete with each other, which is not going to get Ohio anywhere. What we really should be looking at is we're competing with other states and other countries. And it's only by bringing all of those assets together that Cleveland, Columbus, Cincinnati, and Ohio as a state actually can compete. And I think that requires leadership to force it to be so. And then all of those wonderful things. I think what has been great about this is collaboration is better and easier when you know each other. There's some sort of personal connection to support that. So it starts with leadership and then the sort of personal connections that this framework really has enabled investigators and leaders from each of our organizations to sit and talk to each other on a regular basis and be transparent and be collaborative.
And it is happening, right?
It is.
So there is a cadence where the leaders are getting together. There's a cadence where you all and some of your colleagues are getting together. There's a cadence where you're sharing information amongst the different cities, the other innovation districts, right?
I'm not even sure if I'm allowed to ask this, but can I ask a question as a corollary to the question? I want to ask, how much of this has been spurred, catalyzed by the pandemic? Am I allowed to ask that?
You just did.
Okay. So I think there were some interesting natural part of it, leadership part of it, out of necessity that we reached out to each other during the pandemic.
I don't know if it was spurred by the pandemic or it was spurred by the opportunity, right? I think there was an opportunity and that opportunity, created, I think the specific tenets of the innovation district, I think came from the idea of how could we really, and I remember the conversation, right?
Yes.
How could what you all are doing
Yes.
really change the tide in how we as a world are fighting this thing? And what could come out of that. But I think it started with the state's leadership opportunity to do something different and big.
My own observation would be, you all said it different ways at different times. In my experience, that the experience in the pandemic of you working together gave you, I think, some level of confidence that we should just, find a different way to keep going. But to say that was a catalyst, I think would be probably unfair, but certainly might have been an enabler. That would be my observation.
Maybe I'll add one thing. I think it's a great question. Look, the pandemic changed the world. We all had to work together. It's a much smaller world, it feels like, than it was before 2020. And we went into lockdown. And we realized that this is our home. We all live here. We care about it. We're not competing with each other. The more we all are successful, the more we are all more successful. And that means Ohio. And in 2018, I had a conversation with Jobs Ohio that we're falling behind. Ohio is falling behind. If Ohio falls behind, who's coming to work for us? Where are the trainees going? Are they coming to your universities? They're going to go somewhere else. And so I would challenge Ohio to continue to invest and grow because we're working together. We have always worked together in different ways. Now we've just solidified the approach. I personally feel that because I've had grants and collaborations with many of these, the Coulter thing. I mean, I could just go on with CSU for many years, trainees, but now you've all seen it. The spotlight's on us. And I'd like to ask a question too. There's an innovation district in Columbus and Cincinnati. It's not a far drive to Columbus, but it'd be an easier train ride. I mean, the East Coast is united by a rapid train. And if you really want things to sprout up through this corridor, which I would personally like, because then maybe not just UH and Cleveland Clinic would
Okay. So thank you to our Crackerjack technology staff. Sorry for the interruption, but I will, if it's okay, I will just paraphrase my question. Serpil, you were making the point in your last answers about the importance of the role other considerations, other stakeholders can play in complementing. You use transit as an example, but in complementing some of the work that this group is doing in much more targeted initiatives. The follow-up question to that was, how do we encourage stakeholders to help us understand how they think they can help, why they think, what they can do, while also being sort of inviting that, while at the same time recognizing that you all have initiatives you must drive. So there's a natural tension in that that I think is good, but also important to manage. And so I would ask you all to reflect on that.
I really appreciate the question. Maybe it's something that we all have to think more deeply about. It's not something that we have as a habit of doing. And so I think we just have to learn process, probably develop a playbook that we all can then, develop so we can work together. This is so important for the success of our innovation district for Northeast Ohio, that perhaps, we convene another forum and look to other cities where they have transformed and done something similar. I mean, we could start to look at some cities that in the last 5 to 10 years really had game-changing events, and how and why. I know that you have some of that information, but the more that we know, the more that we can partner with you on what that might look like, because, as much as we want to help, we're not the experts in the economic development of a city or a region or a state. Having said that, I'm, Cleveland Clinic, and we are just 100% committed to this, and it means a lot to us. So really looking forward to seeing what people think and how we could do this. And we have to do it together. Welcoming has to be together.
I think the first part, like you're hearing today, is there, and that there's no one's asking to sell us on the fact of whether we need third-party collaborations. And again, right, to repeat myself, these 5 institutions have been doing great things for decades, and clearly that's not enough to just do what we do. So I think that we understand that if it's just those 5, it doesn't work. We need more, right? And we've been working great with Team Neo and Jobs Ohio and others towards that end. 2 is we have to realize that it's daunting for a third party, especially one from outside the region, to understand, well, how exactly do I engage? And I think that's where the investment and the structure around what's happened is exciting, because at the end of the day, I mean, I used to use the adage of a high-end restaurant, right? You're gonna get better service at a 5-star restaurant than you are at a fast food chain. But there's a cost to that, right? You're gonna pay more. And the investment made by the region and by the state to sort of create an aggregate around these already existing capabilities is critical. It's not alone. You can't just throw money at it, but at least now there are people whose jobs it are to do this. And then finally, I don't think we kind of heard sort of an undertone of, are there politics that get in the way or that? I don't think so. Even in my 23 years now in University Circle, I've rarely, if ever, had a researcher or a leader say, I don't want to work with them. I don't want to work because it's the clinic or UH or Metro. It's more of life gets in the way. I got to take care of patients. I got to get these grants out. And you sit there and say, how do we keep this going? And I think what we haven't touched on yet, but it's being supported by this consortium, is execution, right? It's, execution eats strategy for breakfast every day, right? We need project management. Project management sounds boring, but innovation's about blocking and tackling. It's not that eureka moment. And the more people we have, like we touched on, some of the investments made by the Jobs Ohio have went to create the back office, if you will, to say, now we have people whose jobs it are to pick up the phone and to make sure we know what's going on at UAH and at Cleveland State and Metro. And then in time quickly at our third-party companies, at our supply chains, with our talent workforce. I think that's what's going to be needed to propagate us, because again, we have sort of the framework in place, but we need to actually have now the activity, and it's a one end of the spectrum strategy and finding those value propositions that we need. The other end is that how do you just create random collisions amongst opportunity, people, and capital? And I think that's what we're starting to do more, and that's the execution side. So I think the future's bright. I think, it is. It's going to, the next best question, maybe not today, we're not ready, but is, well, how are you actually doing this? Not what are you doing together, but how are you doing it? Because I think that's what we may start to learn, how to do this really well and start to compete with the other regions that, that were aspirational peers.
Julie, you had a point of view.
I was just gonna say, I think we can always get better, and this is a journey. It will never be over. But in the interim, there are already companies, both within the region and outside of the region, that are working with economic development partners through Jobs Ohio, through Team NEO, through all the others that already exist, that infrastructure exists. It could always be better. But I think what we have to do as anchors in this type is be available when you call and say, I have an idea. It might be wild and crazy, but hear us out and see if we can manufacture a collaboration, if we can find a way to fit that company into something. Success breeds success. And the more companies and third parties and other organizations that are focused on this reach out, and we find a way to make these things work. And I think what you're hearing today is we will all answer the phone, and we will all engage to figure out how we can make it work, because it's gonna take a village. But I think we don't know everyone that's out there, right? And I think that's where we really need to lean on the infrastructure that does exist in the state and the entrepreneurs and companies that exist in the state and the region to ask and say, I have something in this area. Would you be willing to look at?
So I would just say, from an economic development perspective, I'm encouraged by what I see here in terms of the emerging structure, the emerging visibility, because that allows me anyways, and I would guess my peers in economic development would say, to understand better where we think we can help and
Right.
how. And in that sense, I think it's great, but it's sort of said and sort of went, but embracing ambiguity here,
Right.
and get on the journey and keep going is what you're saying. And there may be places for more structure, but structure for structure's sake isn't going to get us to where we need to be.
Right.
Yet. Thank you. Can we also pick up on the point about infrastructure? Serpil, you made in your comments earlier. And it made me think about the investment that the Cleveland Foundation is making in Midtown. And the opportunity you see in that to bring some connectivity, not just from a place perspective, but in terms of building capabilities that can be valuable to helping not just this collaboration work, but create a stronger culture of innovation here. Could you share your perspectives on that, Joan? It's right next door to you, essentially. So if you could share a perspective on that.
On the innovation center that's going up there
In Midtown,
in Midtown.
Yeah.
So, even though we have the internet and digital era and everything, I still think proximity matters. And that's part of the reason why this group will be successful, is because we are a pretty close drive, and this doesn't take the place of the old Zoom calls. And so I think that's one way how we're going to benefit from having the center, close to our campus, close to Case Western, having the facilities there.
Right. Anybody else have a perspective on it? UH is there.
I
right?
have, I'm so enthusiastic about the growth of the Midtown Center. So now we have what I call nodes. We have a node on the west side, Metro. We've got a node in Midtown. We've got a node, University Circle, Cleveland Clinic. 3 nodes. A beautiful city there. And honestly, logistics are important. How far away, how easy is it to get together and meet for after work or during work, have a lunch or a drink, because we will be getting back to that. And I do not think you can undervalue how you connect the nodes. Because when you start to connect the nodes, things happen between the nodes. They fill in. Businesses fill in, they're smart. They see that there's opportunity. Let me build a restaurant out there. Let me have some place that, we can get together. So, certainly between Cleveland Clinic and University Circle, there's that wonderful region. Midtown is the other connect, and then out to the west, and then the city between. So connecting those nodes will synergistically just improve all of us.
It's exciting. We hosted this group, our friends from the Cincinnati Innovation District. David Adams came up a few months ago, and he was saying that the reason people are in that innovation district, it's not for any specific, it's not for access to IP or even talent. They need to be part of the game.
Yeah.
It's like nothing attracts a crowd like a crowd. If we're going to put, these great businesses there and these great institutions, and the Cleveland Foundation are going to be there, and you are a company that wants to grow, you're going to say, well, I need to be in that fray. I need to have random interactions, and I need to know, take advantage of those efficiencies. And I think it's great that the Cleveland Foundation and now all these partners are doing it there, because to talk about an innovation district, but to do it from afar is silly. They're saying we're in it, and we've learned that again through our partners down in Cincinnati, it becomes that it gains momentum, and then you have to be there. It's that flywheel. So, and again, a lot of it around that talent, because we need to know the people that we're going to need to work with to compete in this global market.
And again, going back to proximity, a lot of the work we're talking about is actual physical work in the laboratories where you need very specialized equipment. And we have many dozens of students who are going back and forth on a daily basis between the Cleveland Clinic and Cleveland State, taking classes at Cleveland State, doing the research at the clinic. And we also have, many doing that at MetroHealth as well, going back and forth, taking advantage of the expertise and some of the facilities there. And, the quick ride on the health line or one of the public transportation, our students are able to take advantage of these resources. And Case Western too, we have collaborations like Case Western and maybe UH. So again, having these different nodes is helpful for our students and the productivity as a region.
A great Sting quote, not notes, but notes, where he says good music is just as much about the space between the notes. Yes, it makes me think about that quote. We do have I think some on from UH would say, we've been there for a little bit with the Midtown hospital that we have for our pediatric and women's hospital. Certainly some great work with Dave's and some of the institutions already there. We will have a presence in the next build out, a small footprint, I believe, with our diabetes center, Dr. Baytool there. How do we also maintain that spirit of humility as we go into this, where again, it's not a build it and they will come. I think it begins to address your question or point, Joe, about not just the what, but the how. We are trying very actively to build out programs, the activities. It's only as good as the engagement and the cool stuff, the important stuff that people will do together within the four walls, within the space, within that region. And so thinking about ways to partner with CIA, if mixed reality and interactive design is our next gen focus with computer design, we've got some great applications in healthcare for that in terms of augmented reality, virtual reality. How do we partner so that there is a healthcare narrative in the proto narrative that's really percolating up right now? With Magnet, obviously, there's some great exciting things happening. With Jumpstart, we've got some great relationships, all of us. So how do we force ourselves through the mandate permission of our leadership, at the same time get the creative juices flowing so that we're actively reaching out and saying, what about this activity? What about this program? And extending our own capabilities, but also, in the spirit of CID, how do we also avoid not just doing what we're already doing and calling that innovation, right? So that we are holding ourselves accountable, each other saying, you're already doing that, or how is that new and innovative? Because that's what ultimately is going to differentiate us in the eyes of the rest of the world. So very excited. How can we collaborate, to your point, in terms of different programs, as we're going to have co-presence there and the proximity?
Thank you. Molly, I will ask one other question as we're doing that. If we have any questions from the listeners after this, maybe it's a good opportunity to do that before we move on. If anybody has any listeners have a question, please feel free to put it in the chat, and then Molly will help us in a second. Let's move on to companies. A lot of this is about new business creation, new investment from companies. How are you all thinking about enhancing the interaction with companies about real opportunities for them to invest alongside, whether we're talking about technology transfer, new business creation, or other types of significant collaborative partnerships?
Again, I learned this from working with you all over the last couple of years, especially as talent acquisition has become the primary, at least in the short term and probably for a long term, along with supply chain. Companies are saying, how can you help us if and when we're there to maintain our workforce in two ways? One, in that you're creating talent for us at the university levels or at the clinic levels that we know we can access. There's a community there. And two is it costs us a lot to recruit somebody to keep us here. What can you do to help my, mid-level executives feel that they want to be in Cleveland because they like the fact that they get to do, an adjunct at Case, or they get to take a night class, or that they have world-class healthcare services. How can you actually not just be a provider of intellectual assets or a supply chain partner, but actually partner with us to want us to grow our company and to have our employees want to be there. And that's virgin territory for at least for me. And I'd say for us, right? Because it used to be, well, here's what we're great at. We're great at engineering. We're great at life sciences. And this is what we put out. And now, we're starting to say, what do you need? And not just what do you need from the baccalaureate degree or even the graduate degrees or professional degrees, but when you're here as a resident in Northeast Ohio, what role can we play? And so that's exciting. And I think that's part of what, you almost look at any innovation district nationally, they're always going to have the eds and meds as anchor tenants because you need that density of intellectual capital and those big brains and those training opportunities.
Go ahead, Kip.
I think on our end, we're trying very aggressively to not just have a one-size-fits-all process in how we intake opportunities, Bill. Can there be an expedited, accelerated process if there are certain criteria that we're aware of? And one of the programs that we just talked about for Jumpstart, we have a healthcare collaboration fund supported by the state of Ohio. And if there's a company that meets certain criteria, let's accelerate them, put them on the fast track. And oh, by the way, they're a foreign company perhaps or outside of Ohio, maybe considering setting up some kind of facility, not just from a sales and marketing standpoint. Well, let's even boost the acceleration there. And we're notorious in healthcare for moving at the speed of, glacial speed in many cases. But how do we, that's a carryover, I think, from the pandemic as an opportunity, move fast as possible. In fact, how do we think about big tech as our competitors? They can go to other states, as you rightfully point out. So our own struggle, our own grappling internally is how do we accelerate these opportunities if they meet certain criteria to create these fast track lanes that we haven't had before. And we're working with various partners to figure out co-fast lanes in this process.
Any other thoughts? Okay, I don't see any questions on the chat. So we have about 3 or 4 minutes left. I leave it to all you. Any closing thoughts about the experience, where you're going, how you're feeling about it? Any asks of listeners? I'll start with. Let's start with Julie.
I think the ask of the listeners is hold all of us accountable to what we said. When we don't work together and we don't respond, call us out on it, because we have to, people get busy and priorities change. And this is going to take focus. So, all of us have to hold each other accountable to lifting the region, not just ourselves.
Joan?
So I would say the ask is hire our students, get co-ops. Let us know when you need co-ops and interns. That'll make us stronger.
I'd say comment is as much excitement as hopefully we've expressed today. We're 1 year into this. It's a 10-year program. So there's gonna be a lot more to come. This is really neat. The ask is exploit us. Exploit takes a bad verb at times, but it's like, look, we've told you what we're doing. Realize, say to yourself, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're a business, if we know they're doing all these things in Midtown or in University Circle, there's all this investment, there's all this excitement, there's all this collaboration. How can that benefit me? How can I exploit that to grow my business or make my life better? Because if it's just up to our big brains, right? There's 5 of us, or there's 5 institutions, but we want the rest of the world to be part of this. So don't be afraid to exploit this.
Serpil?
Well, we'll just reflect on, I agree with what all my colleagues here have said. I really like Joe's point. Take advantage of this. I mean, this is an opportunity, maybe once in our lifetime for Northeast Ohio. This is good for all people in Northeast Ohio, all businesses. And Cleveland is very entrepreneurial in terms of the arts. music, food, and those people need to be part of this because it's the entire robust ecosystem that we need. And that's how we can really support each other because that's opportunity, companies coming in, again, opportunity. This is where there will be talented workforce, professional people that can help support what they want to grow here. So it's going to be fertile ground. And now is the time to start planting and moving in because, I think in a decade from now, you're going to see pretty amazing stuff.
Thank you. Yep.
I saw in a Wall Street Journal that came out a few months ago about Middle America being the innovative heartland of America, where we don't need yet another photo app. So go to the coast if you want to develop another photo app, but this is where real problems are and opportunities are. And the stories that are in that article, very short, but it's like, wow, people are so innovative, not just folks associated with our respective institutions. And to Joe's point, bring it, exploit us, and how can we exploit our own community? And if there are ways to develop pathways to connect with our community and the community of innovators, we've got to work on that as well. So I love your point about I'm just not a UH employee. I'm a Clevelander. I'm an Ohioan. And there's this proto narrative that's being developed. We'd love to see us all embrace that.
Let me close this by thanking our listeners, thanking you all for sharing your thoughts today. It's truly been my personal pleasure to be a part of this, and whatever way we have been able to help has been great. The Jobs Ohio team, it's been fun to start getting engaged. And Julie, you said hold us accountable. Keep holding us accountable for drawing to identifying ways that we can bring value to it. So thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody. And I hope everybody enjoyed this and has a wonderful day.